Boom! What's going on, everybody? I am Logan, the 64th Gear Jammer Skeele, and this is Toy Talk. Today, our series, What It Takes to Make a Single Diecast Model Car or Truck, continues with assembly! If you remember back, we started with raw materials and followed our vehicle all the way up into its shipping cartons. Today, we're going to talk about assembling our model. Yay! We have already discussed making all of the parts that are necessary and the packaging for our model. And now we have to put it all together. If you take a moment to like, subscribe, and ring that bell to get notified of all of my videos, I'd really appreciate it. And I've got a great free resource for you. It's on resin versus diecast. It tells you what resin is, why resin's taking over the limited mass-produced market, and why we need to stop thinking of only diecast models and start adding resin models to our collections. Grab your totally free copy down in the link in the description below. Now the big question is this: do you want a unique toy collection that is the envy of all your friends and fellow collectors worldwide? If so, you have come to the right place to learn about all things diecast and resin. Follow along as I talk about the latest and greatest releases from the top manufacturers in the industry that will make your collection stand out from all the rest. My name is Logan, the 64th Gear Jammer Skeele, and this is Toy Talk. As I already said, today we're talking about assembling our model. We're finally there. But before we get to assembly, what we need to do is take a quick review of everything so far. So far in the series, we have gone from the raw metal all the way up to our diecast parts using a high-pressure diecast injection machine. The castings are cut off of the sprue and they are cleaned. Then the sharp edges are removed and they're ready for paint. Next, the parts are hung on a tree for painting. They're painted either with a airbrush or a powder-coated painting in a paint booth. This gives us a nice painted finish on our metal parts. Plastic parts start with the raw materials as well. The raw materials are injected into a mold in a high-pressure plastic injection machine. This makes our plastic parts. Here we see a chassis for a simple model car that's still attached to the sprue. These parts are then clipped off of the sprue and ready to be sent off to be painted, or to be chrome plated, or off to final assembly. Wheels and tires are cast like the other plastic parts. They are cast as one piece on cheaper models. On higher quality models, they are often cast as separate parts. When they are cast as separate parts, the tires are usually made out of a soft rubber material. Window glass is formed with one of two different methods. In mass-produced models, the plastic injection machine is used with clear plastic. This makes a hard, clear window for our models. In limited production models, the vacuum forming machine is used to make super crystal clear window glass for our models. Headlights, taillights, and other details are made either as plastic parts or they're tampo printed onto the bodies. These give our model more realism. With the advent of micro LED lights, illumination is coming to more and more models. Here we begin assembling a basic four-part model. This one shows the wheels being pressed onto the axles and the chassis. Next, it shows the interior part being added to the chassis. Now we see the chassis part, the interior part, the clear window part, and the diecast body all being assembled. This is a cold staking machine. It is used to crush the two metal pegs down to hold the four parts together, making a finished model. Seen here are finished cars in their clear plastic blister. Next, the cardboard hang tag is glued onto the plastic blister. Now the packaged models are on their way to the final station where they'll be put into the shipping cartons and sent off to the warehouse to await shipment. At the end of this video, I'm going to assemble a car and an RV. So stay tuned so you can see just how simple or complex a model can be. Finally, we have all of our parts made, painted, and waiting to go to their stations on the assembly line. We have our packaging waiting for us at the end of the assembly line for that model. Let's begin with assembly! Assembly is the most labor-intensive part of building a model. The different parts require different methods of assembly. The model will then pass through many different hands before it is finished. Large production run models are built along a movable assembly line, very much like real cars. The first station would assemble the body of the model and put it onto the movable belt on down to the next station. At the next station, another part would be added and put on the belt and sit on down, and so on. This would be repeated over and over again until every part has been put on the model and the model is complete. Then it would be sit on down to the last station, where it would be packaged into whatever type of packaging was chosen for this particular model. The package would then be put into the shipping carton and sent on to the warehouse, where it would await shipment to distributors or retailers. Another way that models are assembled is a system where each station puts on its parts, but instead of using a movable belt to go between stations, the person puts the parts on mini models at his station, then puts the partially assembled models into plastic trays, which are then carried to the next station. This will be repeated over and over again until the model is complete and ready for packaging, and once it's packaged, then it'll be shipped off to the warehouse. This method is a far more labor-intensive method and used on much smaller production runs. The last assembly method is reserved for the most limited of production runs. This is a method where all the parts are put on at one station by one person. All the parts will be laid out at that station in the order in which they go on the model, and the skilled model builder will add them to the model one piece at a time by hand. Once the model is complete, it will be sent off for packaging. This method is the slowest method in order to make a model and is reserved only for the most exclusive limited runs. Each method of assembly is viable and has its merits. The choice of assembly type is primarily based on the number of units that are needed to be made. The movable belt assembly line is the fastest method, and it is used on the largest production runs. Now that we've talked about the various methods of assembly, let's get to building that model car and RV. Hey guys, what we got here is the simplest car that you can ever go on and put together. This is a Hot Wheels. It's a 4-part car, and I'm going to show you the basic assembly. You start with the chassis. You pick the interior piece up, you put it on top of the chassis. You put the window on top, and then you put the whole thing inside the body. And you have an instant car. One of the easiest models there ever was to make is the Hot Wheels. They made this so that they could make these models very, very fast. Very simple models to build. And that's how they can make these for dirt cheap and sell them to Walmart. And then it goes off to the cold staking machine, where these two metal pegs are crushed down around the body, and you have an instant car. Then they go and put it into a card, and this is what hangs on the shelf at Walmart. And here we have yet another Hot Wheels piece. It's an F-150 that Hot Wheels did. Again, you can see it's just another 4-piece body. It's got one body, the window part, the interior part, and the undercarriage. Very simple to put together. Put the window in. Put the window in. You put the interior in. Then you put the body on, or the undercarriage on. And then again, it's got the same 2 points that the Fiat had, where it would go into a cold staking machine, where they would crimp that metal around the plastic, holding it all together. Then it'd be sit right off on the assembly line down to the packaging station, where it'd be put into a hang card and then sent on to a shipping carton and off to your favorite retailer. Here is another Ford pickup that Hot Wheels did, but you'll see this one has a couple extra parts. It has the chassis, it has the interior, it has the glass, and it has the body, but they also put a cap on this one to go over the bed, adding one more part in the assembly line. But still, it didn't add much to it. So you'd start with your window piece. You'd put your interior piece in. Then you'd put your body undercarriage in, which, by the way, holds the windows, which holds the headlights in place. And then you would slip on the cap, which goes right on the back. And then this would be, again, put back on the conveyor belt and sent straight on down the assembly line to where it'd be put in its hang card and then off to shipping. The Hot Wheels has perfected the fastest assembly method available for cars. The minimal number of parts makes it very fast, and they can get those cars on the assembly line and down very quickly. Okay, here we have a Greenlight vehicle disassembled. You'll note that this has a lot more parts that has to be put together. This is one of their Ram 3500 dualies that they had just come out with. You'll note it has individual side windows, and then the standard front and back window. Has a bed interior. The bed, the cab are separate parts. It has the chassis here, and it has an interior part as well as a dashboard as a separate part. So this is a little bit more expensive model, and there's more parts that goes to it, making it a little better model, but it costs a little more to assemble. You would start with your cab, and you would put your interior glass in first, starting with your side windows. And then you put your main windshield in. And then in would go your dashboard piece and the rest of the interior tub. Next would come your, in this case, the next piece that would have to be assembled is you'd have to put the bed liner inside the bed. Then you get your interior bed of the bed put in, and in this case they would go this way, and those pegs would be hit with a and those pegs then would be hit with the cold staking machine to hold those two parts together. And then finally the chassis would be put on and also hit with a cold staking machine to hold it in place. And you can see with more parts it takes more time to assemble the model, adding more cost to the model during the assembly line. Okay, what we have here is one of the Greenlight Fleetwood bounders, and you can see that this has got quite a few parts that have to be put on. Now in the assembly line, these parts would most likely be put on by individual people in the different stations going down the line instead of by one person. The Hot Wheels, on the other hand, would have been put together by one person because of simplicity, and they'd have a bunch of people putting all the parts together and putting them on the line. But as you can see with this Greenlight here, there's lots more parts. This model would take longer to assemble. There'd be more people, and it would have to pass through more hands before it was ready to go to the customers. Therefore, this would be a more expensive model to sell. Okay, let's start by assembling it. You'd take this part and you'd add your interior steering wheel and dashboard part to it. Very simple. And then you'd add this part to the chassis. To have your interior and your chassis ready. Then you would start with your body, and you'd start by adding windows to it. Now these are hard plastic windows that they used, and they have little pegs that hold them in place. Now, of course, each person on the station would know exactly which window they're supposed to put in, because that'd be the only parts that they have on the assembly line is the parts for their window. And as the part comes down to them, they'd put their window piece in. And with repetition, the employees get very fast at putting these things together on the assembly line. Now that you have all your windows installed, the next step would be to attach it to the chassis. Attach the chassis to the body. Because all the remaining parts go on the outside. Now, unlike the previous models, this particular model is screwed down instead of having the cold staking method. And they use 2 screws to hold the chassis to the body. Which is common in your more expensive models. Next, we'd add the back bumper and the front bumper. Then we would add this awning piece. You'll note there's just holes drilled, so everything just pushes right in. A drop of super glue may be used on the assembly line, and it may not. We'd add the mirror onto the passenger side. Then onto the roof, we add this back rack.
And we have the rooftop air conditioners, which have plastic pins that just push right into the body. On the back, we have this ladder. But you would put your windshield wipers on. And then the last piece that would go in is the driver's side mirror. Same thing with the driver's mirror. The hole is a little bigger than the piece, so it won't stay in place without super glue. This is why the assembly lines use quite a bit of super glue. But you get the idea. And then you have a finished, essentially a finished model. This would go on to either the packaging station, where it would either be put in, as Greenlight sometimes uses, a hang card, where they have their plastic blister, or it would be put into a window box, as they have done in some of their other stuff. They'll use a display case and a window box, and they'll just screw it to the base. But either way, it'll make a great model sitting on a collector's shelf, and with fancy packaging, it'll look good sitting on a retailer's shelf. And that's the basis of assembly. It's as simple as that Hot Wheels piece to as complex as this Greenlight bounder, or if you get into the CNC machines, they'll come with removable hubcaps, lug nuts to tighten the wheels down. They can get almost as complicated as a real car. And all of that assembly, that takes it from either being the $1 hang card at Walmart or the $400 CNC card that you only sit on a shelf and you'll only find it to your premier retailers.
And for you collectors out there, please don't forget, I've got that great free report on resin versus diecast. It tells you what resin is, why resin is taking over the limited mass-produced market, and why we really need to stop looking at only diecast models and start adding resin models to our collections. Grab your totally free copy at the link in the description down below. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell to get notified of all of my videos. And if you know somebody who'd enjoy this, please go on and share it with them. Hey, and share the other videos too. I am Logan, the 64th Gear Jammer Skeele, and this is Toy Talk.